alternative to YouTube.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I feel like the internet's about to reset, you know?
The more that they keep doing this, people are gonna jump ship from all these like mainstream outlets like YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and all and like Twitter and stuff, because people want more freedom.
Yeah, for sure.
All
For
right,
sure, man.
I
Because
just
like it's
clicked.
eventually it's gonna be like the only thing you're gonna see is super sanitized stuff on the internet, you know, and people just like are gonna look for where's the real stuff, you know, like this is all like the fake sanitized stuff. Like where's actually, you know, are gonna look for where are the
Where's
real
the
ones, you know?
real
Stuff, you know, like this.
Exactly. All right. So I'm gonna get started right now. Welcome everyone to Frank Analysis. I'm your host Franco, and I am pretty upset today because another fellow comrade has been censored online. Infrared from the channel Infrared. If you want to help him out, please tweet out hashtag free infrared. I have him on here today, right now. Infrared, how's it going, man?
What's up, man? I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm upset because of what happened to you. So, before we get into that, let's get started and introduce you to the audience here for the people who don't know you. What exactly is it that you do, and what motivated you to get started with your channel?
Um, so the infrared is actually a collective of
Mm-hmm.
about 11 people internationally, and for many years we've been uh, in private, not in public. We've been following both what's happening in the world as well as developing certain theoretical positions. And finally, we decided to, to go into public and share, what we thought were some unique insights to the world. And we started the Infrared Show, and it initially began as a podcast, and some. Then we started to move toward quick form edited videos, and then finally we started live streaming about in February, and so far it's been really successful. And I guess what motivated us is that we were sick of. Well, we weren't sick of, but we wanted to introduce a new alternative
Hmm.
to what was already. We were sick of just critiquing all these people like privately. We wanted to actually put our own position out there.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I started last year. This channel specifically is not a year old yet. It'll be a year old next month. So I'm still pretty new here, but I've been growing pretty fast. I What motivated me was that there wasn't enough voices out there that were that were that weren't that were not like too ego driven. Like there was too many like fragile egos in political YouTube, and there was too much division. So I wanted to start a channel where I can have like some panel discussions and bring people together with different perspectives. And I think that you also have been going after like some synthetic leftists like in BreadTube, right? Because you want to show how these people are misguiding people. And so I guess that might have been something that motivated you, is to be another voice out there that's dedicated to the truth, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were sick of the people who were repping and monopolizing the meaning of all this kind of socialism and all these kinds of words, and we didn't like it's people keep saying, oh, the Democrats are going to the left and the progressives in America are moving left. We didn't like the way they were quote unquote moving left. We think they were exaggerating some pretty false political divisions in place in the country, the dumb culture war stuff. They were doubling down on deeply unpopular and deeply unfamiliar positions as far as the majority of Americans are concerned.
Yeah, so you already went after Vosh. I that was actually my first exposure to you, was seeing that video in which you went after Vosh, um, which was really much needed. I mean, this guy needs to be exposed because he's telling people out there, like he's giving people like counterproductive strategies of voting for these people that represent corporations. I mean, how are we supposed to finally have a representative government if we keep electing these leaders that are just going to make corporations more powerful? You also went after what's his name? Uh, Crap, how did I forget this guy's name? The freaking Destiny. But yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
tell us about when you went after Bausch.
Yeah, a few things. The first is that I've noticed Vosh's debate strategy is very much passive aggression. He'll have you on, and he kind of just wants to be the guy in charge, and he feels like he's going to dominate the conversation, and he's just going to humiliate you as an idiot. And no matter how polite and nice you are to him, that's always his end goal and his shtick. So I kind of came and shocked him, and
Hmm.
basically defined that conversation. And I really could sense, I took him off guard. So it was very much, the bombastic, whatever. It was very much intentional because I know his style, I know his strategy. And comparing the amount of viewers at the time I had compared to him and, the level of our audience, it's like I felt like that was the best strategy to actually make an effect, and not allow him to just roll over me.
Yeah.
Um, but regarding the substance of the argument and the debate and stuff, yeah, I honestly just think that this is the second point, I guess. You could see now at this point that even Senk from the Young Turks is to the left of Wash. Even
Yeah.
Senk has come out and admitted that the so-called progressives in Congress are not actually going to get anything done. It's an incredible blunder that they didn't fight for the $15 minimum wage to go into the COVID relief bill. Meanwhile, you still have Vosh. I mean, even after he told everyone to vote for Biden, even after, all the dumb things he did during the primary with Bernie and his messaging, now we have Vosh. Just the whole left on YouTube seems like the breadtube left. It seems like it's just a platform to make excuses for the Democrats now, and they have this plan for 4 years. They're just going to make excuses for Democrats.
Yeah, and it's sad because there's so many young people that are being introduced to this, and then they're being misguided. They think that this is what socialism is, and then YouTube props up Bosch. Like I've never seen a channel grow that much, like that fast. Like where he's now what, like 300,000 plus subscribers. It's insane to me. It's not natural growth in my opinion. Seeing that. In my opinion, like this is just, it's not me making an accusation. It's just me being skeptical. There might be something going on behind the scenes, but I mean, who knows? All we can do is just keep telling the truth and keep trying to guide people back on the right path, you know?
We can't confirm anything, but there are
Right.
some kind of suspicious things. Like, for example, on Twitch, even for example, we just have some really dedicated haters, and it kind of a lot of it makes me think like, okay, is this organized somewhere, or is this because these guys are really super dedicated in terms of finding ways to get us banned, spamming, and you know. So I don't know. We've had our suspicions about who Vosh is and who he's connected to, but we try not to get paranoid. And also, I think at the end of the day, people like Vosh may have gotten popular recently, but in the long run, the his position is very weak in relation to the world and reality. I mean, if you think about it concretely, his whole shtick is basically like, well, the Democrats did this, but here's why you shouldn't be upset about it. And it seems like this is going to go against the tide of populistic sentiment that awaits us.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Going back to that debate, I noticed that something that Vosh does, like his style, is like he gaslights, and then he starts bringing up a whole bunch of stuff. But what you did is you stopped him right there. Whenever he tried to gaslight, you interrupted him, you interjected, and stopped him right in his tracks. And then he didn't know what to do, right?
You know, I noticed with the whole interrupting things is that I watched the video again, and every time I interrupted him, he was just bringing up some random aside comment and smug, ironic comment. And at no point did he actually have anything to say in response to me. And when I did
Hmm.
let him talk, he was like, to complete a sentence, he said, okay, I'll give you your 30% or whatever. And then he was like, okay, my first question, do you know anything you're talking about? And it's like, So I let you talk just to say this completely meaningless bluffing comment. Like,
Right.
he didn't have a single point to raise against me because I shocked him so hard in this kind of. It was almost like an ambush, you know. he, yeah,
That's the second time I've seen him rage quit. The first time I ever saw him rage quit was with Nico House, who's in my network, the MCSC network. But yeah, he didn't know what to do with you. You kept calling him out on this bullshit, and he didn't know what else to do, so he just dipped. The Destiny debate, it was more calm, but you know how Destiny is. He's just freaking sarcastic. Just like tries to act bored, and when he does that, his audience thinks that he knows that he's like smarter than he is, because he's like, yeah, like I'm above this shit. I'm just like,
you
yeah,
know,
well,
it's interesting. I'm less hostile to Destiny in general because at the end of the day, he's the original one. That all of these Voshes and Breadtube people, they all just kind of came from him. And it's almost like I'm speaking to the original one instead of the copy. And I'd much rather just speak to the original version, rather than all these copycats like Vosh and all them. And yeah, it's interesting because I actually ended up getting Destiny riled up at the end when we were talking about the whole Russia Gate stuff. Actually got mad, and I wasn't trying to aggravate him when I was like, "Why are you mad? Why are you mad?" Like, I've been calm. Why are you mad? And at that point, he rage quit. He exited out when
yeah, because he doesn't have anything to debunk it other than mainstream media talking points. I mean, all you have to do is like cite all these articles that people like Aaron Mate have done. Like everything is so well documented to show that Russia didn't infiltrate. There was just the only thing that shows that happened is that there were these like fake online accounts that were promoting stuff, 90% of which had nothing to do with the election. It's a complete exaggeration. I can't take anybody seriously who still believes in Russiagate. And sadly, there's still people that believe in it. And there was just recently a mainstream media article that came out today talking about, Putin was trying to sabotage Biden's campaign by talking with people from the Trump administration. I haven't taken my time to look at that article, but I guarantee you it's probably just like word of mouth stuff from like State Department representatives.
Yeah, it's super interesting that we live in an age where it seems like the media is always obsessing about the facts and evidence based this and evidence based that. When you get down to the meat and potatoes, there aren't really much factual, there's not really a lot of rigor when it comes to the way in which they're, justifying this as factual.
Hmm. So Twitter suspended you recently, right? So let's get into that conversation. What exactly happened, and what did Twitter say to you for the reason for why they suspended you?
Basically a group of like 5 super dedicated Canadian LARPers who like are in, those kind of like, the new Call of Duty game where it's like the Cold War, but woke version. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like the kind of Biden. I think they're called Blue Cold Warriors, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're calling themselves neocons, I think, something like that. It's a new fad. It's a new trend. There's a group of 5 dedicated ones. We're continually blowing up. I didn't even know about Twitter's features about how you could like selectively mute them. They're just like, as content creators, we have to deal with information management,
Mm-hmm.
and the information we get is the way we know what kind of feedback we're getting. And a group of 5 super dedicated people who are desperate can really obfuscate that kind of feedback mechanism. For someone like me, at least, who doesn't know all the ins and outs of Twitter and all that, how to use it. But anyway, I was just arguing with them and, back and forth. And I didn't say anything that violated the terms of service that I was banned for. But I was being mean to them, granted. I was saying a few things about their mom here and there, things like that. And yeah, I got suspended for 7 days, and I was like, okay, whatever, because they were mass reporting us. They were,
Oh God.
the infrared community just doesn't care about Twitter. They just don't. they I guess they considered it a waste of time, and rightfully so. I don't really control who they report or what they do, but they were just, they just mass reported us. On top of, I think what broke the straw that broke the camel's back was that we have been mass reported a lot by the breadtube adjacent people, and they are much more numerous than this kind of group. So I think their mass reporting you know, really contributed to this kind of ultimate ban. But Twitter said I was banned for issuing threats of bodily harm, something like that. And it's completely made up. There were no threats whatsoever. There's nothing I said that could be interpreted as a threat. There was no any kind of threat. So I appealed the ban, and I'm still waiting a response from Twitter. Hopefully, we'll get unbanned. But if not,
Hopefully.
it's really not the end of the world.
Right, right, and you can just make a new account. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a big campaign out there for you to return. I don't know, like you have a massive following out there, man. You've been growing really fast. All these people are out there on Twitter saying like, hashtag free infrared, free infrared. Caleb Maupin came out and was supporting for your return, also tweeting out free infrared. But yeah, man, you, what can you tell us about like how you were able to grow so fast? Like, what was it for you? Like, is it the confidence? Like what I tell people is, for me, if you want to grow fast with all the YouTube suppression and stuff, you have to do something that's unique, and you also have to already act as if you already have those like 100,000 plus subscribers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main thrust of it was the patience of our collective, the infrared collective, because for the whole Trump era, at least, we were just silent. We did not do anything publicly. But our position was fundamentally unique. And I think the reason we've been getting so popular is that we're putting that out in the light of day, and it's like no one knew about it before, but it's been cultivated for so long, and without regard for kind of a lot of the ways you waste time on the internet with drama and pettiness and all that kind of stuff. So we've just developed this very rigorous position, and finally, when it comes out into the light of day, it's like it went viral, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I think another thing also is that the confidence thing is important. You another thing about streaming is that there's no room for hesitation. You have to be quick on the kill, is like how I like to put it. You can't be self-conscious. You can't be insecure. You can't really take yourself that seriously, I don't think. And yeah, that's just how I view it.
Yeah, and who cares what people think, as long as you're gonna be true to yourself. It's don't attach yourself to what other people think. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So what else was I about to ask? Oh, another thing that helps is the collaboration. Because when I did a poll about like how people found out about Frank Analysis, people were saying, "Oh, I found out from you because you went on Combo Couch. I found out about you because you went on Hardlands Media." For you, you were fearless enough to go on these breadtubers shows and debate them. So how much of a factor do you think that played into it?
Oh, I think easily the decisive factor. I think well, when we started streaming, when we were at about 300, 400 subs, each stream would get us a minimum of 30 viewers. Each stream, like without exception, minimum 30, and it would start steadily rising, 40, 50, and we would spike sometimes to 80, and so streaming, we were very successful from the start, even without collaboration or exposure at all. Well, it's not quite fair to say that, because before we started streaming, we did have collaborations with some prominent people in the video form through interviews. So we interviewed a guy who's kind of prominent on Twitter. We interviewed We interviewed the Chinese artist Fan Wenan, who's famous for his drawing of uh, New York under a communist led America, which went viral on the internet. We interviewed Katya Kazbek. I'm not sure if you've heard of her. And yeah, we had those collaborations, and those, I guess, I think those, and then also we made very high quality videos that people seem to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what finally broke the camel's back and kind of led to an exponential rise, to a point of like at least 100 viewers minimum per stream, was our debate with Xander Hall, the guy named Xander Hall, who I didn't even know of before the chat told us about him. But we debated him, and then the day after we debated him, we debated Vosh.
That's
And
really
the day
that's really
after,
fast. It's like
yeah,
one.
and then
It was like in one weekend, right?
it was all in one weekend, yeah. And finally, Monday, I think I'm pretty sure it was the Monday. That's when we debated Destiny. So, an all in one weekend, we kind of went viral in one weekend.
That's what's
Um,
up. So did you hear about what happened to my channel in terms of censorship?
no, I didn't hear.
So I was monetized for less than 2 months, and last month, me and some other channels like Nico House, Graham Elwood, Jamal Thomas, The Combo Couch, Ford Fisher, we all got demonetized on the same day, and we received the same email at the same time at 2:18 p.m. It was really crazy. I didn't get to experience being monetized for more than 2 months, and there were a few articles written about it, but they mainly had people like Graham and like Jordan Cheriton who got one video taken down, but his channel didn't get demonetized, going around talking about what happened. But I knew that there was going to be more censorship to come because with the COVID stuff, when there were people that were challenging some of the mainstream media narratives about COVID, because not everything that they're saying is completely accurate. There were channels that were getting taken down, like back in 2020, like mid 2020. Some of them left YouTube for good. Others, moved on to backup channels. And seeing as how the Biden administration was having so many, people with ties to intelligence, ties to big tech, and how Biden himself had more support from the intelligence community than the Trump administration, I knew that there was going to be more censorship coming. There was going to be more censorship regardless with Trump or Biden, but I had a feeling that there was going to be more under Biden. But this was like
Oh,
what, like 3 weeks after Biden's inauguration, and then we all get demonetized. All of us who put in labor for YouTube, and we bring people to YouTube's platform, and then this is how they treat us. And I'm afraid to reach out. I'm afraid that they'll look over my content. They weren't even like clear about what it was. They didn't tell us like what videos. They just told us to review the community standards and then to find out for ourselves and start deleting videos.
I mean, definitely. We've been anticipating the same thing regarding Biden. Our observations are one to one, the exact same. But we've been trying to diversify our platforms. We just set up a site, infrared.gg, which is tying a lot of our platforms together. And maybe we can add more. Hopefully, there's another streaming platform we could eventually add. But we try not to stay bogged down on one platform. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, and we usually multi-stream on both of them. Tonight, I decided only Twitch because the YouTube, I just was too lazy to make a thumbnail and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
usually we multi-stream on both.
Yeah, yeah. We'll try to get you onto Rockfin. Rockfin is an alternative platform where they pay in cryptocurrency using the Ray token, similar to what Odyssey does. I don't know if you heard of Odyssey, but you can't stream on Odyssey as far as I know. But you can back up your channel from YouTube onto Odyssey, and then your videos automatically get uploaded. If you upload to YouTube, they automatically get uploaded to Odyssey. So that's a good
Oh wow.
backup. Yeah, with Rockfin, you have to go through a whole application process, and you have to get like a recommendation.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
really interesting.
So what are your what's your ideology? You're a Marxist Leninist, right? So what does Marxist Leninism mean to you?
Well, we call ourselves Marxist Leninists in the age of multipolarity. So for us, um, it we view Marxism Leninism principally as significant because um, it's a it's a theory, or it's an ideology that contains within it uh, maybe 100 years of historical experience, and it's a theory and ideology that's embedded not only in the national but the states of China, and to a lesser extent now Russia. So for us, we don't really view Marxism Leninism as like a abstract ideology per se, but as a way of identifying our appreciation and recognition of um, the historical experience of the 20th century. I mean, I guess I would say for me, Marxism Leninism means uh, it means the kind of catchword we have is that it's an index of definite historical experience, and we think Marxism Leninism can help clarify a lot of the contradictions facing American progressives and leftists when it comes to very practical and uh, somewhat tame struggles, at least in comparison to like grand, lofty goals of revolution and so on.
Hmm. Yeah, one thing that you always bring up when you that I remember from your debates is that a lot of these people that are in BreadTube, they get distracted too much in definitions.
Mm.
If you think about it, yeah, definitions are pretty much just man-made. You know, they don't actually exist. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, I was actually kind of surprised and a little shocked that this was the main thing that, was being so poorly received by Vosh's audience and the rest of these people, which is that, I mean, it seems self evident to me. I bet I am coming from a kind of theoretical background, but it seems intuitively self evident to me that the meaning we the meaning that words have for us are defined by reality. We don't actually first voluntarily define what a word is abstractly and then impose that on reality. Words come from the way they're used in actual reality. And it's like, to me, that kind of seems very self evident and simple. But I was subject to a lot of derision and straw man attacks like, um, you're just saying that words can't be defined at all. And I think it's not, I don't think you need any complex linguistic theory to just understand that you can do your best to try to sum up what a word means, but you can't actually voluntarily define the word in the sense of, establishing the parameters within which this word is meaningful. You can't actually control that um, before the fact of this word being used in reality in a certain way. And a lot of people reproached me about the Voss tweet. It's like, well, okay, granted, but all Voss wanted to do was establish some kind of common baseline of meaning so we know we're referring to the same thing. And I actually, right off the bat, will not grant Voss that assumption because I've seen how he debates and I've seen how he operates, and what he does is very lawyerly. He will in bad faith twist the definition you give of a word and turn around and use it in a completely opportunistic way to apply to something that betrays the reasoning you have for defining it in the way you did. I mean, for example, uh, he'll be like, "What is your definition of fascism?" And I'll try to give my best ability to sum it up in a few sentences. And he'll be like, "Oh, but I can actually apply that sentence to some completely, irrelevant and some context and some situation that you couldn't superimpose it upon. So it's kind of like this basic confusion of I get a definition from reality, but you can't then use that definition as a substitute for reality itself, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He. I've seen him do that a lot. Like he's like, "Can you define fascism? Well, can you define Marxism? Can you define can you define Nazism?" Like he gets distracted with that. He doesn't realize also that these things evolve over time, and that things are very nuanced, and things fit in a gray area. Not everything's going to be black and white. Like if it doesn't um 100% fit that definition, like what does that mean? But what if it can fit, an example can fit like what, 95% of that definition? These things are just like illusions that are created by us.
Yeah, I mean, the main issue is that we cannot control the meaning of words. We can't control all of the associations words are going to conjure up in our heads. We can try to clarify that we're talking about the same thing, granted, but when I told Vosh, for example, when I talked to him about, the threat and specter of fascism, and then I said, but I think you're using fascism to just refer to anything outside of liberalism. It's not really up to me. It's not really, the burden's not on me to define what fascism means. We have to begin with the common recognition that we're talking about the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I'm talking about how you're using a word. Um, and the reason your use of the word is wrong is not because it's an incorrect definition, but because it's a way to fearmonger about something you're just not familiar with. You're trying to reduce, Trump and all that kind of stuff and make the equivocation to the most terrifying and frightening thing you can think of in history.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm not deep into like socialism or communism. Like I was just introduced into all these communist channels very recently because of people on my Discord. Like I don't even have like a strong political background. Like I entered into this because I felt enough voices with um, there weren't enough voices that don't have fragile egos, and I wanted to learn as I go to serve as an example for people about how far you can go. But what something I've noticed since my few months of listening to these new socialist and Marxist-Leninist channels, Maoist channels, is that there is some disagreement with what to classify China. Like, is it state capitalist? Is it socialist with Chinese characteristics? So I'm curious to hear what your take is on what China is. Like, is it socialist or is it state capitalist? Like, what exactly is it?
Mhm. Well, for us, it's just in our view, it's kind of arrogant to set up our own definition of socialism and then say the one that makes sense for over 1 billion people, that they use that word to describe their situation and their history and their reality. They're all wrong and we're right because,
Mm,
we're theoretically correct. So I think the word socialism in China has a meaning, and it's referring to something. It's not just referring to nothing. It's not just a deception. When Chinese people describe their society as socialist, they're trying to say something meaningful. And in my view, that is actually what gives meaning to words like socialism itself. It's not, you know, it's not people creating definitions and creating ideas in their head to conform reality to. It's a word that reflects, that has a meaning that's reflected in reality itself. And to me, um, socialism is a very long tradition that goes back in the 19th century. And to me, it's very easy to, not easy per se, but it is possible to demonstrate how contemporary Chinese socialism has inherited that long tradition in history to not just be some, separate thing that has no resemblance or bearing, but is socialism. I mean, the whole crux of socialism, the whole point is a more or less, this is a simplification, but it's more or less a society whose ends are, instead of being established for purely private or individual or profit based ends, ultimately is to serve the people, to serve the people of the country within which it lives. And China is a state whose whole locomotion, whose whole reason for existing, and the thing that rationalizes all of the different kinds of policies and decision making ultimately goes back to this simple goal, um, this simple goal to develop the forces of production and raise the standard of living of the Chinese people. And I think Americans have a lot to learn from that, especially when we contrast it to the kind of system we now have in place, which prioritizes the interests of a small minority of profiteers against the needs of the broad majority.
So what elements would you like us like? Would you like the U.S. to incorporate from what China has right now?
One of the things I think America should learn from China is that China, um, for example, always has, in terms of all of this kind of financial speculations and you know financial abstractions, China always has receipts in terms of building things in reality. And what I mean by that is that instead of just pursuing money for money's own sake and defining its success in terms of a line on a graph of the stock market, getting higher, China directly has receipts in the way in which it measures its progress. The Chinese government is very efficient at building, for example, infrastructure, building public transportation, at building cheap housing for people who need it, at doing things like alleviating poverty. Um, During the COVID crisis, it throughout the whole world, people were shocked at how Chinese were able to build a hospital in 6 days to meet
Oh
the
yeah.
demands of an overflowing sick population. China builds and plans cities, whole cities, from scratch. Um, it's America has a lot to learn from China in terms of. Another thing is also in terms of mitigating the effects of CO2 emissions. China has very dynamic and robust methods of slowly getting its economy off of fossil fuels and transitioning toward more renewable types of energy. The government has been promoting the use of electric vehicles like nowhere else in the world. So China solves problems in ways that I think above all, it should prove to more populistic minded Americans, I think like you and I,
Mm-hmm.
that America faces a lot of problems, but those problems aren't natural problems. Like, they're not inevitable problems. They're problems because we don't have a government that serves the people. And obviously, we can't just replicate China in America, but we can learn from the way in which it's been able to deal with problems that we also face here.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of like populism, which you brought up, the more like since I started, educating myself with back in 2016, that's when I had like my political awakening, I guess, like with Bernie Sanders revealing how corporations pay off politicians. Like I didn't know that because that's not exactly what it's taught to us in school. But as time passed on, I became like, especially recently, I became less and less of a believer in electoral politics. Like, I don't think we should be prioritizing so much in electoral politics. Maybe we should, I guess, maybe in like locally, definitely more so locally than nationally. But I think that we really need to prioritize on activism. We need to make these politicians feel their urgency, and we're not getting enough of that, in my opinion. But curious to hear what your stance is. Like, how much should we prioritize on electoral politics versus on the ground activism?
I think the thing we need more than anything, first and foremost, is a platform that can serve as an organ for us to engage in any type of actions. I think the time for a third party has come. I wouldn't have said this 4 years ago, but I think after the second round of trickery and the legitimacy of the two-party system, not only the two-party system but the Democratic Party being exposed, um, I think it's possible now for there to be some kind of two-party, some type of third party, and people doubt this possibility because the two-party system has been in place for you know uh, almost a century now. And my response to that would be, but the two-party system has an origin, and things must always confront their origin. All
Hmm.
things must confront their origins. And I think now the two-party system is confronting its origins. And if you look at the origin of the modern-day Democratic Party, it lies in the amalgamation of many different political forces. The predominant one being populism. Populism is the origin of the Democratic Party itself. Southern agrarian populism, as well as more populism generally. And I think the Democratic Party is going to be ripped apart at the seams by the weight of its own contradictions. And now we must re engage with the history of American populism and salvage a new type of third or some new party out of this. We should learn from the Populist Party in the early 20th century. We should learn from the Farmers Alliance. Um, and I am looking carefully at things like Movement for a People's Party. Now, I don't know what to think of it. I'll be honest with you. I don't have a decisive conclusion, but I'm keeping a close eye on it, and I hope with more knowledge I have of it, I can maybe provide constructive
Yeah.
criticism or have a clearer view of if that will get anywhere. But I think definitely where I'm standing here is that I think it's time to prepare for some type of new party.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and Jimmy has been a big advocate for that as well, but he's mainly been an advocate for Women for a People's Party. Oh man, I've been having a lot of volunteers on recently that have worked with Movement for a People's Party, and it sounds to me, based off of what they've said, based off of the petition that they've all been a part of, that's signed by like over 200 people, based off of the testimony from a bunch of people who used to work with Nick Brana in the past, it sounds like if Movement for a People's Party is to succeed, they're in some serious need of new leadership. Something that I think that like I definitely, like, I'm with you. I support third parties. Like, in theory, like we need one. We need one that's going to unify all people. Because right now we don't have a government that represents any of us. It represents corporations. And in order for it to be successful, we're going to have to convince, people who we don't agree with, to put aside our differences for now, and let's unite for this third party, so that we can take down the duopoly and finally have a government that represents us. And then we can like have like our own parties or whatever, as long like, because now we finally have a government that represents us. But yeah, that leadership in MPP, I have like a lot of videos with people giving their testimonies. Um, but but yeah, man, like it's something that will help unite a lot of people with different ideologies. Would be things like anti-imperialism. Um, oh, another thing that people really need to focus on is election integrity, because right now the current system that we have heavily suppresses third parties. Now with HR1, that's going to make things even worse for third parties. And it has to be, a third party has to be a coalescence of different movements, like things that, like different movements coming together. Something great that happened during in January when we had the force to vote protest in DC and the Assange protest in DC is that we had the coalescence of those two movements, like people going to both events. We need to extend that nationally and for different movement, different protests, like the anti-war movement, the civil liberties movement, the whistleblower movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. All these movements need to come together and learn from each other. Their minds will be open, their consciousness will be raised. And especially with people that are in the election integrity movement, we can form a very strong third party. But the thing about MPP, I think, is they put the cart before the horse. Like they're not really there yet with coalescing people with different ideologies, people that come from different movements. What I see right now is people that come from, that are disenfranchised Bernie supporters from 2016.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with it myself, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think another thing that we need to do is we just need to make sense of the situation, right? Because a lot of people are just plain confused about
Yeah, we
a lot of
really need to
people who would,
inform people. We really need to inform people like on the ground. That's why I say like online communities, they translate they become on the ground communities. Like you start to meet people that live nearby you, and then when you meet people, you can start something on the ground. When you go on the ground, you inform people. When you're online, you inform people, and then it becomes a domino effect, and more people are informed. We have a better idea of how the system works and how we can, take down the system that's oppressing all of us.
yeah. Well, I hate to cut it short, but I think I gotta go now. But thank you so much for having me on. It was really a pleasure,
It was a
and
pleasure,
I really
Haas.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody in the
Appreciate it.
infrared community. And I do want to say
Yeah,
there's a
let me link your channel in my. Yeah. I appreciate your support, man, so much. You know that Twitter ban. I was really happy to see all the outpour of support coming from people like you and Caleb and others, and so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. And I'm looking forward to more collaborations. If you have not yet subscribed to Infrared, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go ahead and subscribe to Infrared. And I do want to let your audience know, Infrared, since I know that since I know you're streaming on Twitch right now, there is an event happening right now in Washington D.C. It's called Fuck Censorship Protest. You can find information on it on the Combo Couch Twitter page if you want to attend that protest. But yeah, Haz, thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Hopefully, we'll collaborate in the future, and see you later.
Take care. And to everybody else, stay informed. Thanks a lot.